There was a time when all of us thought that MCP was dead. Even the co founders of big AI companies were telling us how they were shifting to APIs and CLIs instead of using MCPs. It felt that honestly, MCP was not useful. And that was the whole narrative going on in March. And last month in July, MCP has changed. A new specification has been launched that has changed the protocol at the core level. So, in this video, I will talk about why we felt like MCP was not useful in March and what has been changed just last month, and why do I think that MCP is here to stay. So, without any further ado, let's jump straight into it. Let us start with the basics. First, let's understand what is MCP and what does it do. So, MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. It is a protocol that provides context for the models, and these models are nothing but these large language models, LLMs. So, you can think of it like a standard that has been open sourced and it allows you to connect your AI to the external systems that exist out of these LLMs. MCP is also called like a USB-C port for AI applications. So that's another way to think about it. And MCP is something that is supported by all the AI providers out there like Plot Code, Codex, Cursor, GitHub Copilot, and many others. So it doesn't matter which harness or which agent are using, MCP support is already provided. If you see this tweet back from 11th March, you will notice that this kind of blew up with around 3 million views and close to 5K likes. It says that Dennis Yaretz, who is the co-founder and CTO of Perplexity, he has said internally that they are moving away from MCPs and instead of MCPs, they are using APIs and CLIs. And this was the time when all of us felt that MCP is not going to survive. I help founders and individuals in leveraging AI. So if you are somebody who needs help in figuring out where AI will fit in or how it can benefit your business, drop me an email. My email is linked in the description of the video. I would love to hear from you what you're building. Now, the next question that comes to anybody's mind is, if we are saying that people are switching from MCP to APIs and CLI, so what's the reason behind it? Why are people doing it? So the first thing is context. So what happens in case of MCP, since it follows a client server architecture, all these servers that are there exposed as MCP servers and the clients that do the implementation, most of them what they are doing is they will do all the tools call even before user asks something. So what happens is the context gets bloated with the JSON schemas and the descriptions. And this is the same context that the LLMs use to respond to us when we are in a session. And by now, if you have already seen the video that I created on why Cloud Code burns through tokens, I'm sure you know how context works and what happens with every message that you type in a session. If you haven't seen that video, I would highly recommend you guys to check that video out. It talks about context, prompt caching, and everything that you need to know to use these LLMs efficiently. I'll link it up here. And the thing with context is, the larger the context is, with every message, the whole conversation history needs to be resent, and it will just charge us more tokens. It won't be that efficient and effective when using these large language models. Another reason is authentication. So all these external services like GitHub, Notion, and Stripe, all of these have different authentication mechanism and login flows. It's really difficult to manage all these authentication sessions, I would say. So that's another reason. Now let us talk about what happened last month that changed the way how we think about MCP. On 20th July, MCP released a new specification called 2026-728, and this specification changed the MCP server at its core. One of the biggest changes is that the protocol is stateless at its core, and this is one of the most requested feature out there from the developers. What that means is earlier, MCP used to be a stateful protocol, but now it has transitioned into a request response stateless protocol. So earlier, how MCPs used to work was MCPs would be started with a handshake, and the server would create a session ID that will be used to tie all the requests to its state. So as you see on the left-hand side, the client is sending requests through a load balancer, and the load balancer is sticky. So what that means is all the requests are going to go one particular instance, which is instance A. So now in the newer versions, the handshake has been removed entirely, and every request is self-describing. What I mean by that is every request is going to have a protocol version, client identity, and the capabilities it needs. So what that means is in the newer version, this request can land on any instance as you see in the right side diagram. It can land on any instance A, B, and C based on a round robin load balancer that we have in between. Now we no longer need those sticky sessions to route these requests. The important thing is the application can still have state but it has to be explicit rather than hiding in the protocol session. Another thing is with this multi round trip request, the bidirectional stream doesn't have to be open all the time for several interactions. Instead, when the server wants more information, the client can retry with the answer. So the stateless MCP fixes the infrastructure and the session problem that we had. What about the tool bloat problem? This is something that this stateless MCP is not going to address. So let's talk about the way how Cloudflare has done it. Code mode is something that got introduced by Cloudflare in Feb this year, and it tells you how you can give your agents an entire API in 1,000 tokens. And the whole idea is for reducing the context window usage during this tool use. So what happens is instead of you describing every API operation as a separate tool, what they have done is they have just defined two tools. One is search and the other is execute. So what will happen is using the search tool, the model will search for the endpoints it needs, it will write code, and then once the code is returned, it will run that code inside these isolated workers through the execute tool. So Cloudflare has close to 2,500 endpoints, and if they were to describe all these API endpoints as tools, then it would have taken them roughly 1.17 million tokens, which is more than the context that is available out there in most of the models. So using this method, using code mode, what they have done is they are just using two tools, which is search and execute, and they brought down the token cost to 1,000 tokens, has been reduced by 99.9% for them. This is the input tokens that we are talking about. To get rid of the tool bloat problem, code mode is one approach. The other approaches are tool search and progressive disclosure that you can use. Just a couple of days ago, on 22nd August, all these maintainers, they came up with a new roadmap for the vision for MCP. And for them, the topmost priority is progressive disclosure. This is the exact thing that will help you in getting rid of this tool schema overhead that is there. This concept of progressive disclosure is not new. This is something that has been already followed in the agent skills that we have. So as you might know, for the skills that we create, what happens is all these harness and agents, what they do is they just load the skill name along with the description in the context. And depending on which skill gets picked up, then the rest of the markdown files and all the other utilities get loaded. So similar concept needs to be followed for MCP, where the entry point is small and all of these tools shouldn't be loaded upfront. So that is the priority for the maintainers in this roadmap. And this is just one of the way that will make this whole tool schema overhead fixed for us. With everything that has been changed and the future roadmap that is there for MCP, I believe that MCP is here to stay. I agree that there were issues and real problems with MCPs earlier in March, but with July release, the whole architecture has been changed and even the authentication has been improved. As you might know, MCP was invented by Anthropic, and last year in December, MCP was donated to Linux Foundation under Agentic AI Foundation that got created, which was founded by Anthropic, Block, and OpenAI along with other companies supporting it. So I feel under Linux Foundation, it is under an ecosystem where it's meant to grow through collaborations and neutral feedback. And I believe that Linux Foundation is a perfect home for MCP and this whole agentic AI foundation to grow and thrive. So it is not just MCP that got contributed to this agentic AI foundation. There's also Goose from Block, which is a native AI agent, and there's agents.md from OpenAI. I love where this agentic AI space is moving, especially in the open source space. So they believe that as the internet was built on open source, that's how the agentic AI should be built. So that is pretty exciting. If you have faced context related issues with MCP, let me know in the comments below. And if you like such type of content, make sure you subscribe to my channel and share it with your friends. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.